Hello, and welcome back to my second fic idea from the vault. I am a little more organized compared to last time, aka the first time, but I am still very rough on the format of everything going on. But I hope you will stick with me if you're interested in learning about today's fic idea, which, as a summary, if One for All stays with the previous user after it's transferred, what's to stop Izuku from transferring it through the Dekusquad through Platonic smooches? Yes, that is definitely a crack idea this time. But yes, so today we will be talking about my fic idea called, with the title, Kissing the Homies Goodnight, of course. And it's summary or its bracket title. Like I said last time, I have the main title and then something in brackets that more summarizes it, so I can jog my memory if I've forgotten what it's about. But so the bracket title is just One for All share. Kissing the Homies Goodnight is pretty descriptive, if I do say so myself, when it comes to this idea. So we'll be talking about that, and also the writing process, like regarding this fic, the writing process in general, and some other specific things related to this fic, specifically queer platonic relationships. Now, I don't know a lot, but I do have something to say about them in general and in relation to fanfiction. So if you're interested in that, stick around. First, we will be going over the overview section. Izuku and Shoto get into a queer platonic relationship after the sports festival. Izuku gets the idea randomly. If All Might still has access to One for All, then you could basically loan it out temporarily to someone you trust. It's an idea in the back of his mind as he focuses back on the lesson. Then, it's the Hosu incident, and Izuku lends One for All to Shoto, and he takes down Stain and the Nomu. One for All gets revealed to the two boys in the hospital, and Ida joins the QPR. Ochako soon joins the QPR and is in on One for All. On Island, both Tenya and Ochako get to use One for All for the first time. Izuku lends One for All to Bakugo before he's kidnapped, and he's able to break out. Tsu is brought into the fold. They crush the exams. After Ground Beta, Katsuki is brought into the fold, though only queer platonic with Izuku. After joint training, Shinso is brought in. So that is the overview I came up with for this fic when I was coming up with the idea. So the main premise, I would say, for this fic, it started off just, pure crack fic kind of thing. There's a little joke in the My Hero Academia fanfic space of like, how was One for All transferred for the first time? Because, how could they know that? So, first and second is a decently popular crack ship. And, One for All is exchanged with any bodily fluid, really, because it's, DNA, so any fluid will do. So the idea is that first and second were romantically involved in, a romantic situation, if you get what I'm saying. And they exchanged bodily fluids, and that's how they figured it out, which is really funny. It is crack. It is great. So, what is a less explicit version of that? And I guess more intentional, because now they do know how the quirk works, so Izuku knows. And I thought, kissing the homies goodnight. Like that one meme with the sharing chapstick group of just guys, give me a top up, bro, smooch. That is literally those two ideas combined is where this came into existence. And while I do love poly relationships, those are also fun, I am also very interested in queer platonic relationships. So that is the direction I decided to take this fic in. And one reason that I think I decided to go for that is that this is a crack ship. And so for me, before getting into fanfiction, I had never heard of queer platonic relationships. And I'm sure plenty of you have also never heard of them. So I will give you a quick definition and then my definition. So queer platonic relationships, or QPRs, also known as queer platonic partnerships, are committed, intimate relationships between significant others whose relationship is not romantic in nature. So my understanding from, learning about it through experiencing it through fics, and also some research just through small video essay kind of format, is that queer platonic relationships are in between platonic and romantic. So they're not romantic relationships, but they're a bit more, committed and close than pure platonic relationships. And as someone on the A spectrum, they interested me because most often, I think, from what I've found, you find queer platonic relationships between people who are on the A spectrum. Asexual, aromantic, that whole community is where I'm mainly finding queer platonic relationships. So, yes, it is like friendship plus almost. People in queer platonic relationships can kiss, they can snuggle, they can hold hands, they can raise children together, be life partners, all of that and so much more, or not that. It can be as much or as little as the relationship needs or the people involved want, which I find really interesting. And I was introduced to that through fan fiction. I never knew it existed before I read about it. And the main way I learned about poly relationships was also through fan fiction, and mainly crack fics at first. Because I find that crack fics can be a good way to introduce unfamiliar or possibly weird feeling at first topics in a fun way that gets you comfortable. So, as someone who has never been in a queer platonic relationship but is interested in it and has done some research on it, and also specifically research for this, I thought it was a good opportunity to integrate it into a fic to explore it more. So it was just a topic I'm interested in. And if you are interested in it, there are lovely little short video essays and long video essays and just articles if you want to read about it online. I recommend it if it does sound interesting. Which also brings up another sort of side to it. Because fanfic is a lot of way people get introduced to a lot of queer topics, including different orientations, terms, and even gay sex through smut, it means you do get introduced to a lot of good stuff, and it is a lot of the time the first-hand experiences of people, but it also can include misinformation. This is fanfiction. It's not betaed most of the time. It's just one person sitting and writing, and people can get it wrong, either on accident or just on purpose because they don't care, or even occasionally maliciously. But whatever way it happens, it can happen. So you do have to be aware that not everything you read is the one true way to look at something, and you can be getting misinformed about things. So while fanfiction can be a good way to introduce someone to something and a good way to learn about it, also just be aware as a reader and a writer that if it's not something you know, even if it is something you've taken time to research, sometimes the information out there can be wrong. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, so yes, that is how this fic started to come into being. So next, I will move on to the info section of this fic. Basically just queer platonic Dekusquad, with maybe some kachan in there. Basically, it goes on the premise that one for all can survive in a host after being passed on for quite some time, and if they take turns, basically kissing each other multiple times a day and passing it between each other, they can all share one for all. Just superpowered queer platonic squad time. They take down all for one like the chump he is. Maybe it's just Dekusquad until the training camp, but Izuku gives Bakugo a kiss before he's taken in, and he just fucking busts out because he's got super strength now, bitch. It's not break your bone strength. Most of the power goes into boosting your quirk, but you get 5% cowling or something like that. But Katsuki is not on the sharing one for all queer platonic relationship train and is like, once was enough. Maybe again in emergencies. So Dekusquad gets to be the lightning friends, but only Izuku gets the extra ghost quirks, because Izuku can use 100%, but the others get snippets. Well, Izuku can use more than 100% because it stockpiles power from everyone using the quirk, but one-for-all power-ups are just written off as quirk awakenings because they keep happening during life-or-death moments. So, this is the kind of fic, the kind of crack fic, where it is just looking at the canon storyline and being like, what if this funny thing was different? How would that affect things? And not in a serious way. It's taking the already existing story and characters and tweaking it just a little bit to add in something that is interesting to think about and can be very funny. Again, kissing the homies goodnight is the name and basically the premise of the fic. Also included in this is the orientations that I assigned the characters involved in the queer platonic relationship for this fic. Now, this was just, first thoughts thing. It wasn't really developed much. So if I were to theoretically write this fic, they might change, but this is what I originally wrote down. So the entire Dekusquad is on the aro spectrum. Todoroki is fully aromantic. Izuku is gray romantic. Ochako feels romantic attraction but has no desire for a romantic relationship. Tenya is aromantic. Tsu is gray romantic. And Shinso is also fully aromantic. So those are the ones I chose. Now, fanfiction is, typically associated heavily with shipping, but you by no means need to have a romantic relationship in a fic to have a fun time or a good fic. And, like I said with exploring queer platonic relationships, how I thought this premise was a fun way to do that, even though it could have gone poly. With that comes with the exploring aromantic relationships. Like I said, queer platonic relationships and the aro spectrum are heavily tied. So as someone on the aromantic spectrum myself, I thought that this could be a great time to explore some of my own feelings. I personally like exploring how I'm feeling through writing. A lot of people do. You don't have to, but it can be a good experience, both just a fun time and a way to learn more about yourself. So you may notice that I gave everyone just they're fully aromantic or they are more gray romantic, except Ochako. So what I chose to do with Ochako is I specifically, when I was writing this at the time, I was still thinking about if I was aromantic or asexual and all of that, and I wasn't quite sure. So for Ochako, I didn't give her a label. You don't always need a label. I just gave her some of my feelings on the subject, just turned up a bit, a bit more to the extreme. So Ochako feels romantic attraction, but she does not desire a romantic relationship. And me in my childhood growing up, I didn't really get crushes. I have had a total of 5 crushes ever. And I had no idea what people were talking about till crushes until I got into high school. And only one of those crushes was on someone I knew in person who was a real person and not a character. But, so I have felt what I would label as romantic attraction before. But when I think about, do I want a romantic partner or would I just prefer a life partner in a queer platonic sense? At the time, I was really leaning towards queer platonic. And currently, I could still go either way. It's just whatever falls in my lap. But, so that's how I started kind of exploring that. So not everything needs a label. And I didn't give Ochako one because I wanted to reflect my own experiences. Write what you know. Even if I don't know queer platonic relationships, I do know a bit about being aromantic. So that is where that decision came from. And now we will be moving on to the outline section. So for the outline section, it has a few specific events, and then at the end it kind of peters off into more vagueness. So, we start off with the sports festival. After punching the therapy into Shoto, he joins the Dekusquad and basically sticks to Izuku. They just vibe, and Shoto loves cuddles and doesn't know which things aren't traditionally platonic that he does as platonic. Izuku is confused and thinks Shoto likes him in a romantic way, and while he likes the actions, he doesn't want romance. He accidentally ends up in a situation where Midnight notices his turmoil, and he explains, and she introduces him to QPRs. And he does a research binge and asks Shoto if they could be in one together. And he agrees after Izuku explains, because Shoto doesn't see it as anything different than they already do. They cuddle, share food, hold hands, sit in each other's laps, even kiss, all platonically. Then, it's on to the Hosu incident. And Ida is going to die. Shoto is going to die. He needs to do something. Ida is still out of commission, so while he's back with Todoroki for a moment before rushing Stain, he gives him a sloppy kiss. When Izuku is paralyzed and Stain is approaching him, Shoto is terrified for him, and One for All slides into place, and his quirk just listens. It listens more than it ever has. His ice not shooting out in a big wave, but instead snaking across the ground fast as lightning and encasing Stain in the blink of an eye. He's stunned, but when the ice starts to crack from Stain's effort, he does it again, ice flowing out to thicken the shell. He doesn't know what to think, but Izuku is like, "It worked. You did it. Now check on Ida." So he does. Izuku soon regains movement, eventually followed by Ida, and they make their way to the alley. Ida is like, "I didn't know you could do that with your quirk." And Todoroki is like, "Neither did I." Izuku chuckles awkwardly, but the two socially inept bitches don't catch it. Shoto secures Stain better, and Izuku is worried about frostbite and touches the ice, but he blinks and is like, "This bitch not cold." Todoroki is again like, "What in the?" He makes a chunk of ice, focusing on it being as hot as possible. It comes out and he's like, "Ouch," and throws it to the other hand. It was hot. Ida was like, "If you can make your ice hot, can you make your fire cold?" Izuku is silently freaking out about the ramifications of his actions. He needs to tell Todoroki about One for All. He did not think this through. Shoto, meanwhile, is making cold fire and asking Izuku to touch it. Izuku startles and is like, "Okay," before he can process it, and touches it. And it's like a fall evening. Unfortunately, at this moment, a Nomu swoops down and snatches that broccoli. Shoto is like, "Fuck no," and reaches up with his ice faster than he's been able to spread it in the past. Ice encrusts its wings as a crystalline hand grabs the pair out of the sky and lowers them safely to the ground. The Nomu becomes an icicle, while Todoroki tends to where its claws had pierced Izuku's skin. The heroes show up and see the Nomusicle and Stain chilling in a not-so-chilly hunk of ice, while Shoto and Ida fuss over Izuku, Ida being much closer and touchier than friends. In the hospital, they talk. First, they talk about Ida joining their queer platonic thing. Ida is a little flustered when Todoroki brings up how concerned and touchy he'd been, but when both boys say they'd love for Ida to join them, he admits that he'd love that. So it's decided. Shoto suddenly is like, "Something is weird with my quirk. Not just the new abilities. I can feel it." Izuku is looking guilty again, and this time, Ida picks up on it, mentioning so. Izuku thinks it over. He's in a QPR with both of them, and he trusts both of them. He's already going to tell Shoto, so he might as well tell Ida. So he does. He says that he knows why Shoto's quirk is weird. The boys look at him. Izuku is like, "Sorry, I didn't ask your permission, but we didn't really have time." He's rambling, and Shoto was like, "What?" Izuku is like, I may have given you my quirk, and I should probably get it back soon. Ida is like, that's not possible. Quirks don't do that. Well, Shoto is like, OMG, of course. How? Ida interrupts first, and Izuku explains one for all, also mentioning how it seems to linger in its past users. The only real measure he has is someone who held it for years, and it's been over a month and they still have it, if weakened. He circles back to how the transfer thing works, and he says it's DNA. Shoto is like, oh, the kiss. And Izuku blushes like, yeah. Shoto climbs out of bed, despite the protests, and goes and kisses Midoriya. With the goal of the transfer in mind, it does work, and Izuku says as much. Shoto is like, I want to kiss you more, but is the transfer going to be a problem? Izuku says it only happens when you want it, and we've proven it can easily be transferred back, so it's not a problem. Shoto is happy, and says he's going to kiss Izuku. Ida is like, they need to get back in bed, and Shoto says, you're right, and begins to roll his hospital bed over. Ida is taken aback, but after Izuku says he's sure it'll be fine, and to roll his own bed to join them, Ida does. They fall asleep cuddling. After a few kisses, with Izuku and Shoto kissing on the lips, while Ida sticks to hands and cheeks for now. One for all is out of Shoto's system for sure when they wake up. It was actually much earlier, but they don't realize. Which is a little disappointing, but Izuku says they can test it out more with a temporary transfer later. School starts up again. It's not long until Ochako joins the QPR. With how nice it has been for two of his friends to know, he brings her into the fold about one for all. She's nice and supportive. They don't really test out more with the quirk transfer, still wrapped up in their original quirks and their new relationship. Now, I have something to talk about a bit before I move on, and that is with the, transfer of one for all. Now, obviously, in this fic outline, it is not acting like it does in canon, and there are a couple of, logical leaps in how it functions. But an important thing to remember when writing fanfiction is, canon is your bitch. Do whatever your story needs and come up with an explanation later. Or never at all. For some things, it really doesn't matter. Other things, it is nice to have an explanation. But again, if you want something to work one way, do it now. You can make it work logically later. Like in canon, for Izuku, when he gets one for all, it takes a whole day to transfer. But in this, obviously, it takes a minute. And you can explain that a bunch of different ways if you just, sit down and come up with some things. For Izuku, it activated in a high stress, life or death of someone he kind of cares about situation. So maybe that is actually the trigger. We don't know. Toshinori could have gotten it wrong. Maybe he didn't actually learn from Nana the specifics of it. So it could just be he is wrong, or it could be that's a different way to activate it. Who knows? That's a plausible explanation. And then there is also the fact that in one of the movies, Izuku gives Katsuki the quirk and he can use it right away. Which just goes to show you that sometimes even the canon material will say, fuck canon, I'm gonna change it to make this work. So completely feel free to disregard canon whenever you need in writing a fic to make it work. And now, on to Island. Shit goes wrong. They are about to start traveling up the stairs when Izuku pulls his three off to the side and is like, I think I should pass one for all to someone now. They say to pick Toto, because he already knows how it reacts to his quirk, so he does. They go up the tower, but soon Shoto has to stay behind with Bakugo, so he quickly passes the quirk to Tenya. One for all goes into effect after Plan A fails and Izuku and Tenya double-team the robots. When Izuku is about to be hit, but Tenya is midair, he does an impossible maneuver that is so fast he gets to Izuku in time. He looks down at himself to see previously not there engines sinking back into his skin. They're doing well, but the robots are seemingly endless, So while Izuku, Ochako, and Melissa go up ahead, Tenya sticks behind, but not before passing One for All quickly to Ochako. They get to the wind power generator, and Ochako uses her quirk on Izuku, but she and Melissa also start floating. Ochako knows this must be One for All, though the gravity field is surprising. She focuses her quirk just into Izuku and Melissa, thinking about how she needs them to get up there. She gives Izuku a kiss, transferring One for All back, before sending them off. They're making their way up, but only part of the way through, the robots are upon her. With the extra energy from One for All, she's able to activate a gravity field around her and float the robots up. But she's getting nauseous. But just then, Shoto, Bakugo, and Kirishima arrive to help them finish it. Then, the gust of wind blows Izuku and Melissa off track. Shoto immediately starts sending winding ice to reach them, but before it does, Ochako's instinctive gut reaction of no goes to the top as they magically jerk back into place, her quirk shifting gravity's effect towards where she wanted them to go. Izuku bursts through the wall with One for All, and the rest plays out like canon. After how short they and the others were actually able to possess One for All after giving it back, and the fact that Todoroki was able to retain it the longest, they decide to just pass the quirk around each other, Izuku getting it before Foundational Heroics and when they separate after school. They just be kissing all the time and constantly passing One for All to each other, and it works. The time they can use it steadily increases now until they don't have to worry about it for them anymore if they've seen the others at least once that day. It's like 30 minutes at first, then an hour, then 2, 3, 5, 8, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, 24. After a week of doing this, they're at a full day. After a month, they'll be able to go multiple days without topping off. They just do it in class. People thought they were dating, but they just state that they are kissing the homies goodnight, and that it's totally platonic. They do actually explain they're in a queer platonic relationship when asked, but the meme is so good. This brings me to my second point. Yes, kissing the homies goodnight. But second point, one thing I love to do, and specifically My Hero Academia fanfiction, but part of it does apply to other fantasy kind of media types, but it is exploring how cool quirks can be. One of the draws, actually, for this fic, for me writing it, is actually coming up with how One for All affects everyone's quirks. And I've seen, this done in quite a few quirks. Main examples I actually strive after are Cloud's, For the Want of a Nail series, amazing explorations on how the quirks, Ochako's quirk, Jiro's quirk, and Kaminari's quirk. Those are the only three I can think of. I think those might be the only three. Can't remember how fast All Might gets stabbed in that one. Maybe Kirishima has it. It's been a while. Anyway, the way that the quirks are explored with having One for All is really, really interesting. Like, just exploring powers can be a whole fic on its own. So, when I'm able to sneak a little bit in there, it is very fun. So, like, you saw how Ochako's quirk was affected by she can create gravity fields and also specifically control the direction of gravity within the field or whatever's affected by it. And Todoroki has, like, fine-tuned control over his ice and fire, and he can also control the temperature of both in, like, both extreme directions. And then Tenya is a bit harder to think about because mutation quirks can just be a bit more difficult because if it's not just more. So what I came up with is that he can spontaneously grow engines like anywhere on his skin, and they are just more powerful, which I thought is fun. Like, if I were to actually write this fic, it would not be a huge focus. It is not the focus of the fic. The focus is the cracky meminess of it and the queer platonic relationship. But it is a fun little thing to sprinkle in, and you can do that. Just a little sprinkle of whatever makes you happy and excited into a fic, even if it is not the main focus. And now we are into the final stretch of the outline, and time for the training camp. During this time, it's basically just Izuku in possession, letting the others top off for a few minutes at break so they can use it in their training, because they've just decided that this is how they're going to live from now on. This means Izuku has it when the camp is attacked and he goes to face Muscular. Todoroki still having the power running through his veins means he does better against Moonfish, but is still at a great disadvantage. Tokoyami comes in and finishes him off anyway. Izuku is worried about Kacchan being taken, so he gives him a good luck kiss. He's like, the fuck? But they have other things to worry about. He's noticed the weird power-up thing going on in their little homie group, because how could he not? But that shit's weird, and he doesn't like thinking about it. Toga is surprisingly good in Ochako's zero-gravity field, so the fight goes slightly worse for Ochako and Sue. But fighting together does make up Ochako's mind to invite Sue to the OFA QPR. They barely can restrain Toga together, after Ochako reins in her quirk, but the others show up and scare the girl off soon after anyway. Then they realize Bakugo is gone. Feck! Shoto's winding ice isn't able to catch Compress, as he's too slippery. He starts running off, so they do the old yeet. Ocha's quirk making them even faster, and they collide with Compress sooner, meaning he's more beat up when they slam him into the ground in front of the league. When the marbles go rolling, Shoto tries to get his ice to bring it to him, but Dabi melts it and grabs Bakugo anyway. When Katsuki is being dragged through the portal, Izuku says, "At least he kissed the homies goodnight," and Katsuki is like, "Oh, that shit must have something to do with the bullshit going on," but only after he's being pulled through the portal. He lets himself be put into the chair, not exactly knowing how it works or what's going down, plus element of surprise. And it certainly is surprising when Katsuki's drip sweat from his hair onto the cuffs explodes on its own and he's free. This happens a little bit before the pizza, so they stand off for longer, and Shiggy is like, "You can't do that, cheater," and Katsuki is like, "It's called kissing the homies goodnight." Then pizza and shit. The crime squad is, of course, doing crime, though Ochako tags along this time. Izuku told his homies about Bakugo, so they know what to expect. They have a much easier time getting him out. They ice heat with Jiro free with frickin' McQueen propelling them, and Bakugo basically able to fly on his own. They get out, no problem. All Might still loses one for all, and despite Izuku not having told the homies that part, they can guess, and all comfort him. At the "it's your turn," they're like, "Communism, it's our turn." It's definitely awkward telling Kacchan about how he can share his quirk through DNA. He doesn't mention the given by All Might thing. And being like, "give it back." Katsuki kisses him with a scoff and a blush before Izuku can say he can do it through hair. He doesn't bring it up. Sue is also brought in on the secret. It's great. For her, it just enhances her traits even more. They then fucking crush the licensing exam, even if the normal trip-up gets Todoroki in the end. Ground beta happens and everything is explained. After that, Katsuki doesn't join the queer platonic relationship, but he and Izuku come to an agreement for sharing during emergencies, and getting a grasp on what it does to his quirk for those events. The raid arc happens, and nothing is really different. Like, the girls do better against Macho Man, but with his quirk, it doesn't last. They do better against 1B in the training arc, because they don't know about the quirk evolutions. Plus, they're just that much more powerful. But it is a surprise when Izuku uses a weird quirk. The gang talks about it after, and Izuku shares his ghost dream. Banjo was like, "I like the kissing the homies goodnight bit, even if it was an adjustment to getting transferred so much." He shares how first said only Izuku would have access to the past user's quirks. They speculate on if the others might be able to see the ghosts. The answer is yes. They get to share the menaces together. Shinso is soon. Takes a month or two. brought into the fold after joining the class and getting kidnapped into the group. QPR! QPR! And that is it for everything I have written down about this fic idea. This one was much shorter than the last talking about a fic idea. It was much less text, so that does make sense. But yeah, I think that is basically all I wanted to talk about with this fic. So yeah, it is just a crack fic. It is actually one of the only fics that I have written that is like a medium length fic, that is a medium length fic idea that is specifically meant to be medium length. I have a bad habit of writing like ones that would be super long, but this is like, it specifically would be a sports festival chapter and a Hosu chapter, maybe like a chapter or two, or then Island, then the training camp, and then maybe if there's more ideas coming out, there would be one for the licensing exam, like the thing with 1B, or maybe it would just be like kind of summarizing how things will go, kind of more like the last thing would be, but it is more of an actual condensed, this would be a medium length thing, this is how it would be split up, which I do struggle with, so that was a good thing I did here. But yes, crack fic idea, talking about queer platonic relationships. If you didn't know about them before, now you know at least something. They are fun. I really like them. I don't see them enough in fan fiction. They're great. I hope you guys enjoyed talking about this. And like before, if you have any suggestions or feedback, positive or negative, about like this type of video I'm doing, like what you liked, what you didn't like, suggestions, things you might like to see, if you think it could be structured differently, like if you want something like the outline more at the beginning, like the, actual like walkthrough of like plot kind of thing, and other things shuffled around, whatever you think, like I'd appreciate any feedback. Doesn't mean I will do it. This is still just like a fun new thing I'm trying out, and I'm gonna do at least one more. I think these will probably be released in like short succession to get feedback before I think about doing more than 3. But no, yeah, feedback would be really great if anyone actually is interested in hearing me talk about fic ideas that aren't actual written fics, and my thoughts about writing and things coming up in the fics, like queer platonic relationships. If you're still around, I would appreciate any feedback you have, but I hope you enjoyed if you're still here. This was fun to talk about. Unlike last time, unfortunately, this fic does not have any art to go with it, which is sad. Most of my fics don't. It's rare that it does, actually. It was just by chance that the last one had it. Trying, new way, I actually wrote down some notes I have before, like, going through this to see if there were things I specifically wanted to touch on. If you are watching this, last time I had like a static image like I do for most things, but this time I'm pretty sure I put something up on screen moving about. So tell me if you like that. You want it? Something different will be on next time for the third one that I'm planning on definitely doing. But anyway, that is the end of this. I hope you enjoyed. But yeah. There's no link in the description to look to. Well, there is if you want to see the original like Google Doc. There is a link to that in the description, but it is just what I talked about. But yeah, check that out if you want. That is all for this time. I will see you guys next time. Bye!